When we start talking about the greatest wrestler of all time, there's the usual names: Hogan, Rock, Stone Cold, Ric Flair. But there's a different discussion that comes into play when we say the greatest to never be world champion. If that's the discussion, Rowdy Roddy Piper has to be near the top. He was a pioneer in the ring, on the mic, and even transitioning to Hollywood. He bridged multiple eras of the wrestling business and was a true original. But was there more to be had? We discuss on today's show. Welcome to Rebooking the Territory podcast. This is your host, Luke Thayer. This is the podcast where we go through and just take all wrestling storylines, maybe careers of one of our favorite pro wrestlers in the past that didn't quite work out the way we wanted them to the first time. Well, we changed that on the podcast. Today, my guest, I don't even know how many times he's been on the show now. He's one of the crowd favorites. Audiences love him. And we had to have him back on the show again because there's nobody probably more passionate about professional wrestling besides myself than our guest today, Andrew Schwartztol. Andrew, thank you for being on the show again.
Thank you for, I am not the type to not feel, I feel those compliments. I feel it. It fills a void somewhere for me. So I needed it. Long week, a lot of traveling. So this is good. This is fantastic.
It's nice to be able to
I couldn't be happier to be here. Yeah, it's nice. But, I went on with my wife and child. I know you have a beautiful daughter yourself, I think a little older than mine. And I learned a valuable lesson, which I'm sure you knew. We cannot, when we are going away as a family, you don't call it a vacation. It's a trip.
It's a trip.
Not a vacation. And I just told it. So I had to eliminate. I love my family. It was great. Trip, not a vacation.
Yeah, it's the best you can hope for is a visit.
Yes, exactly. It's really a visit. Yes.
That's the best you can hope for. It's not going to be a vacation.
Look, even though it was special, she got to spend great time with her grandparents, my parents. When you find yourself saying every day after hours and hours of just like pure just exhaustion, when you find yourself saying, look, it's about the memories. It's about the memory. When you're saying, look, it's about the memories, that means it's a little bit of a struggle right now. When you have to just count on, when that's what you're counting on is years from now, you will be, happy about it. So, but I am instantly happy to be here. So thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. It is, hopefully we're putting some memories.
Yes.
Instant memories for
This is a vacation.
Audience. This is a vacation.
Yes,
this is a real vacation.
Yes, exactly.
You actually enjoy yourself and for at least an hour or so.
Totally.
We got kind of a fun topic. Again, every time Andrew's on the show, he texts me topics. Even when he's not scheduled, he's sending me topics of like, hey, what about this? What about that?
Fanboy. Yeah.
It's wonderful because we get to talk wrestling. We get to throw around ideas on and off the podcast. But today we're going to be talking about Rowdy Roddy Piper. I always, the way my accent works, it sounds like I'm saying Roddy, like the same word twice, but it's rowdy. I have to almost re-enunciate myself.
Yeah.
But what a great wrestler. There's no doubt about that. And some people might say, like, how would you even rebook this guy? Well, as we're looking through, I just want to even get your first impressions, second impressions, and then later impressions of Roddy Piper. Because I know for me, I think probably the first time I even remember any form of him was the Rock and Wrestling cartoon.
Yeah. Sure. For me, it wasn't that, but that's fantastic. For me, it was, I know I've said this before, I really got into wrestling in 92. Mm-hmm. I just started binging on old Hogan videos. They had Best of Hulkamania Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3.
I still got some.
A lot of visits to Blockbuster. I don't think, it's funny because no one's asked me for it. I don't think I was mature enough for Piper when I was in the beginning. One of the first things I ever saw Piper do was actually when he came back at WrestleMania 95, and there was that celebrity, I want to say Mort Downey or
Morton
something.
Downey Jr.
Yes. And it was kind of like, for that time, like kind of sophisticated, mature stuff. So I liked him. He was such a villain that I think I found him a little unsettling in the beginning. But as I know I told you, off air, the older I get, I mean, the more I just adore him. I mean, first of all, like my favorite wrestler is ever might be CM Punk.
Mm-hmm.
Piper's clearly one of his biggest influences. When we're talking about Piper as an influence, we're not always going to be talking about in the ring, even though I actually think he was underrated in the ring because he could just tell such a story. But he's just, it's unbelievable too, because he's one of those guys that his WWF run wasn't even that long when you look at it, because he took some sabbaticals, to do movies and stuff. And I think, as you said, it's true. It's funny to rebook someone like Piper because he's already, in my opinion, top 10. But what's crazy about him is that you can't name me another guy who's top 10 who was never world champ. Mm-hmm. It's why, I mean, the crazy thing is Andre barely had it, actually.
Yeah.
So that's another conversation. He barely had, but I also understand that because he was more of a special attraction. My thing about Piper is that there was really no reason why he never had it. Like, I see why you couldn't really give it to Andre. Same reason why, even though he did run with it when he got, when he, was able to show more layers, Taker. But in the beginning, it was hard to also give the Undertaker the championship. And that's why they took it right off him, because if you're such a character or such a special attraction, but I mean, and then I want to hand this over to you, but like one of the things, so first of all, I'll say, I think Piper's hands down is the greatest wrestler in the history of the company, we'll just keep it WWF, to never be world champ. I know there's some other great ones we can talk about, but I think it's clearly him. And then talking about number 2 is interesting. It's like, is it Razor? Is it Jake the Snake? Is it Mr. Perfect? I think you can make a case for all those guys for number 2. Piper's clearly number 1, but also it's like, he's by far the most mainstream. I mean, Vince, all he wants is mainstream. He dreams about mainstream. He's the only guy I know that will publish reports of what Bleacher said about something. All he wants is mainstream press. He had it with Piper, but he never gave him a belt. So it's pretty fascinating to me.
He is a really interesting character, because I think I had not realized this, I think, until you said it, of saying, and I'm not sure if you said this off air or on, of that you weren't mature enough for Piper. And so as you've gotten older, he's become a more interesting presence in your wrestling life. And I feel that same way. Like when I was a kid, the cartoon aside, the first time I remember seeing him was, and I've said this in many episodes, WrestleMania 6 was kind of my entry into professional wrestling. I tape traded with somebody, and so probably somewhere in 91 is when I first saw it. And he is in that as the half of his body is painted black.
Yeah, that's not his finest moment.
No, but it certainly, as a kid, I honestly had no idea that it was anything racial. I didn't know racial until probably as an adult, going back and going, oh, that's what he meant. As a kid, no clue. It just completely washed over me. I thought he just painted himself half of his body, and I had no idea that there was any racial component to it. And so that was my entry point to him. So I kind of entered in with him being a babyface, and really some of his most interesting work that got him on the main stage was as a heel. Prior to that, the WrestleMania 1 stuff, the Hulk stuff. And certainly you say, oh, he's the greatest to never have a title. Well, Hulk, now granted, this is coming from Hulk, from Terry Bollea, so we don't know what is fully true and what isn't. He has said in interviews, Piper, I just couldn't trust him to give the belt back, so that's why we didn't flip it back and forth. But he wishes that they could have done it.
I actually do trust him that he's saying that, because it's a completely ridiculously selfish thing to say that is believable that it would come from him, that they
Yeah.
would think that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's tough because the, Roddy Piper is an old school territory wrestler
Hmm.
who happened to hit at the time everything changed. And so Hulk is kind of like that too.
Oh yeah.
Kind of old school territory that just they are the bridge. That's the bridge generation
Hmm.
between old school wrestling and sports entertainment. And so I think that their attitudes were still, hey, like Hulk, I got my leg broken my first day of training, and you had to fight your way into this business. Obviously, Roddy Piper had a tough upbringing, but he had to fight his way into this business. And you you don't want anybody taking what's yours and not reciprocating. And so there might not have been full trust there between Hulk and Roddy. I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I don't know. All I know is that I know Piper had like his own like struggles with a little bit with addiction and stuff like that. But unless if there's, and there might be something I don't know. I don't remember ever reading anything about Piper being like incredibly unprofessional or anything. I mean, they gave it to the Warrior for gossip. I mean, I know they like live to regret that. Um, I mean, but it's so true when you talk about Piper Hogan. Like to me, Piper was like he was the obviously they were different, but like the Rock to Hogan's Austin. I mean, like, and Hogan has said this that he he doesn't maybe become what he became without Piper. And now, to Vince's credit now, to the WWE's credit now, I actually believe they they would reward that now.
Mm-hmm.
They usually give that, right? Even if some guys have to wait a while for it. So it's just that's one of the things that's just disappointing to me. Like this guy was so responsible for so much of the success, mainstream, making it this global thing. And I don't even remember ever reading anything. Oh, they were really close to giving it to him. I mean, it's interesting when you say about Hogan because I actually didn't know he said that. Makes a lot of sense. Because and we don't need to get into this right now, but you know how sometimes when we've done some rebooking, it's like, okay, it would have to be this time. I think you could have given it to Piper a lot. Like, I think there's almost any time he was there, it would have made sense to me. I mean, I get it. They went in the Hogan Savage, they went in the Hogan Andre direction, but there's no reason why Piper couldn't have gotten the belt. It's not like I've just never seen anything like this before because it's sometimes like, okay, we don't want to give it to a guy. Obviously, this is a different time of the ratings, but maybe there was a concern about gate sales, merch sales. No way with Piper. There's no way that ever could have been a concern with him.
One of the hottest T-shirts ever. Still
Ever.
is.
Ever. Yeah. He never became, if anything, when he came back, well, first of all, his like retirement match at 3 was huge. When he came back at 5, it was huge. He always got amazing pops. I've never seen, I mean, I guess I've seen this, but it's rare. Such an amazing heel, obviously, like just brilliant and just like make you so angry as a viewer, but also to be able to transition from that to such a lovable face without ever changing himself. That's what I loved about Piper. And that's what sometimes hurt, at least in his first run, Shawn Michaels turning face, because it wasn't believable all of a sudden that he was like just like helping all these people, running. Piper didn't really do that so much. Piper stayed Piper, and we just loved him. Yeah, I mean, it's a little baffling to me because I don't see. I'd love to know what you think. I don't see why they didn't give it to him. I'm not able to understand that.
It's we'll kind of get into the actual rebooking, but just kind of going back to WrestleMania 1.
Yeah.
Obviously that changed the business completely. But he had such a contentious relationship with Mr. T, who's involved with this. Vince is pushing this. We need celebrity involvement. We need mainstream press with this. Roddy Piper's an old school guy, seems to have a lot of problem with that. Doesn't like Mr. T, doesn't like his involvement in it. He seems to push against that. And even I think there was supposed to maybe be a different finish than what happened at WrestleMania 1. But Piper's like, look, there's no chance of this guy beating me. I can tell you that. So it's almost like I'm I'm so stubborn. It has to be my way with this stuff. And so that might have changed things a little bit, even in Vince's mind, of like, look, this guy is a little tough to deal with. He's very opinionated, and he's not going to just do what I tell him to do.
Sounds like CM Punk.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it literally sounds like CM Punk. Yeah.
Yeah. You get these guys who are incredibly talented, who these are artists. I think we forget this. They're physical artists.
Yeah.
Their body and their mouth is their canvas and their paintbrush. And so they're fighting, especially when they're fighting for themselves. It's not like today necessarily, where you get signed to a contract and a development deal and you're with the WWE for 12 years and then you get your release. It's like these guys were popping from territory to territory. They didn't know necessarily where their next paycheck. It's like, I've compared it many times to comedy. That's the way comedy life is. You're doing road work, you're booking the next thing, you're hoping that you get to return in 6 months or a year, and you're just cobbling together paychecks to create an actual income to live off of. And so for him he's coming from that. So I think I could see Vince just being like, look, he's a lot. He's very talented. He helps put butts in seats, but he's a lot. And he doesn't look like Warrior.
Right.
To be this much.
I mean, I think that's it, right? So yes, that's it. I mean, on one hand, I think it's like a fantastic observation, and I think you're right. I just don't agree with it. Meaning, like, I think the first part that you said about Piper not being a company man. I mean, like, he gave Hogan everything Hogan could have ever wanted. I mean, right? So, like, I don't think, Hogan for years never lost. So that's why he was a happy company man, barely ever lost. Mm-hmm. The other thing, though, actually, it's crazy that I missed it. Yes, this is the reason why Piper wasn't champion. It's because he wasn't roided up. That's it. I mean, like I don't know how I didn't think about that, because he looked so. I mean, he was a big dude, but it was, and I don't know, maybe he did put some stuff in his body, but it didn't look like it.
Sure.
Even like, just like he wasn't, he didn't look like he's been hanging out like on Venice Beach all day. And they really liked that back then. Suffice to say, my body just wouldn't have worked out then, but I don't think that's the only reason why. I think there's a few other reasons that could be another episode. Can we rebook me one time? Just rebook my body. I just want to rebook my body one day. But anyway,
we're gonna go back in time.
Yes, go back in time.
Put some juice in you.
Yes, put some juice in me. And there was a guy. Should I say the full name? I'll say the first name. Billy, which is coincidentally my daughter's name, who offered me steroids like on a weekly basis in the 10th grade, and I just kept saying no. I don't know if we should rebook that or not, but I did keep saying no to that. Anyway, I think that's the reason. Sure. That makes sense to me, except the only reason why I don't get it is because he was like kind of a movie star. So if you already know he's a movie star, then it just kind of like, it's working. It just, for whatever reason, it just doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. But, they were, I mean, like the whole era, it was different. I mean, there's no era, and I don't even think it comes close to the amount of amazing wrestlers who never became world champ. Like now everybody's a world champ at some point.
Well, they also have how many different world championship belts that can.
Yeah, but even before, sure, they have two. But even before that, I just think there's like, I mean, and I know I've talked about this before. Orton being a 14-time champ, Cena being 16-time, Edge having it 11 times. Mm-hmm. It was just so different back then. I mean, it even was like in the 90s. Shawn Michaels only won the title, I think, 4 times. It was just so different back then. But you got Perfect. Jake the Snake never got a title. I mean, and I'm sure there's others as well. But the thing about Piper is that I think there was, and we always talk about this time because I think it's just like the most easiest time to rebook, 1992, 93, 94. Just the easiest time to rebook, because as much as I love the Hitman and some things that came out of it, it's just so easy to play with because nothing was really that spectacular, right? So I think that's, to me, where at the very least you could have given Piper it then. Like, Hogan's gone. These guys are gone. We don't really want roided up people anymore anyway. I know we're doing the new generation, but what if we have one old school guy kind of thrown in that mix, you know?
Okay, well, I feel like we have to, in some ways, kind of talk about Piper's '90s, because his
Yeah.
'80s were different than his '90s.
Yeah.
Like his '80s, like even just looking at his
I like
body,
his 90s, by the way.
I do too. Like,
Yeah.
and I appreciate them more in
Yeah.
retrospect,
Me
because
too.
I certainly, just look at his body. Like in the '80s, he was a little puffier. Is the
Mm-hmm.
best way I could put. He
Mm-hmm.
probably was juicing up a little
Yeah,
bit,
I think so.
But then you look at that match where the Intercontinental Championship match with Bret Hart,
Mm-hmm.
and he's in fantastic
My
shape.
favorite Piper match.
Yeah, he looks great. He is tan. It's like tan. He's cut.
Yeah.
He's in great shape. His hair looks perfect. Like everything about that version of Piper looks great. That's the Piper that can kind of go into the '90s.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got, he almost has just these moments. Like they do this in trailers for movies where it fades in and out, where you see, they'll show a 1 second of like something and it goes do,
Yeah.
and another, screen will turn black, and then do, and
That's
another
cool.
image. That's what it feels like his career in the '90s kind of was. It's like,
Mm.
here's the Intercontinental Championship match, and then here's the Hollywood room
Yeah.
brawl, and then here's him with the NWO, and it just kind of it's not this consistent thing.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing for wrestlers, I think, is to be able to be here, hit, and then leave, come back, hit, and leave.
I've always felt like that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Where we've talked on a previous podcast about Ric Flair. Ric Flair was just always there. And so he didn't get those, here's the big moment for Ric Flair in the '90s. It was, well, Rick's always here, so we'll do something like a program with Hogan, but then he'll drop down the card a little bit, and then we'll bring him back up, but he's always consistently there. Piper was not that. He didn't drop down the card and just hang out for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
And so, I remember that match with, Bret Hart, of course. That's great. Just an amazing match. And then you've got that Goldust match, which is ushering in this attitude
era, yeah.
Right. And you just look at the bridge Piper has. He's old school territory guy. He's the Pacific Northwest heavyweight champion at one point. And then he's going into this rock and wrestling and WrestleMania era. And then he's in the new generation. He kind of helps usher Bret into the main event scene. And then he's now entering into this attitude era with Goldust. And then he's doing the NWO. Like he's the foil of the NWO and Hogan for a little bit, and bridging all of that. And then later in his career, which there's nothing we can really do with later career. When he's in his 50s, where he's tag team champs with Ric Flair.
Yeah. No, and he had some good Piper pits. I know towards like his last year, kind of his appearances started falling apart. But I even like Piper at 21, the Piper's Pit with Austin and Carlito. I mean, everything you're saying right now, I've never actually enjoyed talking about someone as much, because I just love him. I mean, I just think it's, you really have to have appreciation for a guy like this. You also have to wonder, like, what was going on behind the scenes. Like, why? And I haven't heard that much about it. Maybe I got to look a little more into it, but like, why wasn't he pushing harder? Did he not care that much? Did he not want the title? Was he happy? Maybe he was happy with the movies. I mean, I guess for the purposes of rebooking, we don't need to rebook his personal life, right? like his personal choices, but like, it's interesting because a guy like that, and like, that's the difference between him and Punk. Like Punk just wanted what, and I believe that he deserved actually. But with the Pipe, it's different. He seemed to be okay going in and out. I mean, if anything, his WCW run was the one run where he was kind of hanging around for a bit. But I see so many missed opportunities with right after 8. So many missed opportunities. He's having a great year. I mean, I remember when he beat the Mountie, it's like, it gives you goosebumps. Like, it's such an amazing feeling. And the match with Bret has everything. I mean, it's just and when you hear Brett talk about the match, it's like one of his favorite matches. It's just beautiful. And and it just like doesn't, I really think Vince was very distracted. A lot going on. And I know you've talked about this, a lot on his plate. And I think there were just some things that just like fell through his hands, because to me, all right, you're losing Hogan. All right, the Warrior's coming back, but he's a pain in the tush. You have Savage right now, then you got these rising stars, but like Piper just kind of stole the show with Brett. Like, what are we doing here? Like, why not start? And I'm sure this is going to work for the rebooking, but I'm really like, sometimes I think the rebooking, it's fun because you can kind of play around with it. This is like, wow, this really could have helped the business. Like, this to me is like an alarming misstep, because think about a Piper-Shawn Michaels feud. So like Piper stops with Brett, right? And then Piper starts feuding, Shawn Michaels, who did he fight at 8? Tito Santana, great match for him, great veteran guy. Let him move right to Piper. Let them just go at it. Imagine the promos with like Piper, Shawn Michaels, and Sherry. Incredible. I mean, it would have just been magic, I think. And the beautiful thing about Piper, which made him so great, is like he could have actually lost to Shawn Michaels. Mm-hmm. They have a couple matches. He loses 2, fine, and it doesn't matter, because it didn't matter if Piper lost. That's another time when you have just an all-time great, that they can take a loss and it doesn't matter. Great story was told, help the other guy, beautiful. I just think they had such a wonderful opportunity to build him. And now we can start. I think there's like a few other things. And again, I still think Piper, you could have found a way for Piper to take it off Hogan, I think, or maybe take it off even Warrior, maybe. But to me, this is much clearer. Like, we had a really good pathway. You have a good pathway when Ric Flair loses the belt at a house show. Like, that should have never happened. That's not supposed to happen.
Absolutely. It's such an interesting, because I really think that with Piper, he is somebody that we can rebook several different times, different versions of him. And before we right before we get into that, because we're sure. just 1 minute is I want to just relive his WCW run real quick.
Sure.
Because I don't know how you felt about it, because at the time I couldn't understand it. I was like, what is this? This is like from a decade ago. Mm-hmm. It didn't really go anywhere. Mm-hmm. It was kind of there's that moment where Hogan has that match with Warrior in WCW where he tries to throw the flame in his Warrior's eyes, and it just kind of blows up in his eyes.
I wish someone would have just thrown it in my eyes so I didn't have to watch it. Yeah.
Right. That kind of feels like what the whole Hogan Piper thing was, just kind of this little flash bang, and it kind of seemed to just blow up and not go anywhere, and inconsequential, because and maybe that's just what the NWO was at the time. Anything going up against the NWO was just going to get swallowed up because it's a tidal wave. And the tsunami of NWO is just going to swallow up some people. And he's fighting Hogan in what it feels like an old style match. Like, we're kind of going back to the 80s here. And it's not for the title. Like, he beats him in a sleeper hold. Yeah. It's not for the title. It kind of falls flat. Like, what just happened? I remember saying that to my friend. What just happened? Like, this, did he win or did he not win? I couldn't even, it didn't even feel like anything. And so did you have strong feelings at that time about Piper?
I did. It's funny. We really had some of the same feelings. I mean, for me as a fan, I was very protective of WWF at that time. Mm-hmm. I remember really digging NWO in the very beginning. Awesome. But then when I was able to put together, I was like 15, 16, I was able to put it together. They're like, oh, wait a second. They might be like destroying the WWF right now. I was pretty protective about it. So I would still follow everything that was happening in Nitro. But I remember when Piper came out, I was actually just mad that he left. And I was like, actually like worried about the business. And I guess I wasn't going on dates. I had a lot of time to worry about other things. So I was worried about Vince. I should have sent him a letter. And So I remember having those same feelings, and I agree with everything you said. The only thing I'll say about Piper's run, to his credit, I agree with you. I think it was like not really good. And I think a lot of stuff, frankly, from like anytime after, I mean, I know he came before this, but like anytime after like 97, just like, I think he came in 97, right? Maybe late 96. I forget if it was the Halloween Havoc in 96, 97. I just wasn't a big fan anyway. I just think there was, and obviously the cruiserweight was great, but like a lot of bad decisions. But to Piper's credit, he was okay, right? To Piper's credit, it didn't, he made the best of it, I felt like. Like he wasn't like, he was still getting his pops from what I remember. He was still selling merch. He was able to, once he decided to come back to WWF, it's not like he was diminished. You know, I know there were some other things that happened, but if you look at what WCW did to Savage, I mean, I see why the WWE didn't really want him back. He kind of just at the end of it was like this totally different person making rap albums about Hogan and stuff. Piper was able to maintain his integrity. He was able to maintain who he was. And again, that's another thing I love about the man. He could make the best. I think he did the best he could do with what he was handed. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think the run enhanced his legacy, but I think the run gave him some more money. You know, I mean, it's a shame though, because I think he would have been great in the Attitude, like in the height of the Attitude Era. Like I get it. One of the things that made it really good was that it was so young. I would have loved a Piper Rock feud, or like, you imagine like Piper going up against some Nation of Domination, just like what kind of promos could have been there, or like Piper with DX. That's the whole thing. Like, as long as he could still wrestle in the ring, there's really nothing he couldn't do. And you could put him up against these young guys, and I don't think it would feel like, frankly, what it felt like with Flair or Hogan. There was something youthful about Piper because he still had this controlled chaos, or not even that controlled, about himself. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the worst thing about the WCW thing, is because it would have been. I'm not saying he should have been champion in the Attitude Era, but I think they could have found a really nice spot for him. Piper Foley, imagine a Piper Mankind feud. Like, there's just a lot of nice direction. I mean, we never got a Piper Taker feud, right?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. That could have just been incredible. Just the mind games that Piper was playing with him, could have been playing with him. So I think that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. I think we could even start getting into the rebooking, because I want to make sure we give ourselves plenty of time to handle some of these.
Yeah, because I think this is a rebooking where it's like, how do I say this? And I'm sorry for interrupting you. Like, I think this just really can fit. Like, can really, really, really fit.
For sure. Yeah.
And don't have to take crazy stretches. Yeah.
No, I'm gonna go backwards and start with the WrestleMania 1 era Piper.
Let's do it.
Because prior to that, we've had him hit Jimmy Snuka with the coconut, which is, famous and made him infamous in the wrestling business. And he's a known quantity. We know what's happening here. And it's harder for me to, anything that's pre-WrestleMania 1, even WrestleMania 1 itself.
Same.
It's hard because I was so little, and I didn't know about it at all until much later. It's real, like I've said, WrestleMania 6 being my entry point, we'll get to WrestleMania 8 real quick, but just a reminder, that's the Brett Piper match, and that was in Indianapolis, and I didn't get to see that, and I have to point that out on almost every show.
PTSD, baby.
Almost every show I gotta. You talk about earlier making memories with your family.
No, we need to rebook. We need to rebook that. That needs to be. I think we need to start rebooking real life.
Yes, if we could rebook my memories, and I actually get to go.
Yeah.
So that WrestleMania 1 though, especially 1 through 5, I'm just not. I'm too young. I'm not experiencing it firsthand. But I do have somewhat of a gauge about what was going on there. And part of something that I see missing with Piper at this time is part of it is just where the business is and what's happening with the WrestleManias, is that what we needed was a big time Piper Hogan face-to-face feud, which we have a Hogan Andre version of that at WrestleMania 3. Why is WrestleMania 3 like so huge? I think part of it is legend versus legend here. We've got these two big forces, big personalities, big names, and big box office draws. WrestleMania 1 is they threw everything into the pot. You know, even the main event there is you've got a tag team match.
Yeah.
It's Hogan and Mr. T and Piper and Mr. Wonderful, and you got Bob Orton coming in. You know, it's like, let's just throw everything in. It's going to be a spectacle, but it's not really an old school one-on-one match. So I think that hurt Piper. I don't think it hurt Hogan.
Great call. Yeah.
But it hurts Piper because I think they could have flipped the belt back even starting then. Is that not WrestleMania? I'm not giving Piper WrestleMania because you want Hogan must pose at the end of this thing.
Yes.
But maybe just prior to it, maybe a coconut type of incident, a house show, MSG, something where he gets the title off of him. Because as we see, like, even why is WrestleMania 2 not as successful? And you go, well, you got, King Kong Bundy versus Hogan, but they're also doing this. Here's one location that has a main event. Yeah. Here's another location. It's disjointed. And so WrestleMania 3 was, like I said, that first one that had the head-to-head. Everything points to this main event, not spread out, not taking shine and spreading it all over the place. So in that WrestleMania, just prior to that, we're going to have, at least in my view, house show. Piper cheats his way into getting that title off of Hogan, and the rematch is WrestleMania 1.
True.
I was going to say, yeah, because Hogan's going to win, so he's going to get the belt back at WrestleMania 1.
But why not have? Because I thought the tag match was kind of cool. Why not have Piper get the title after the tag match, and have it be Piper Hogan at 2? And that way, like, 2's so much better than it was.
Well, I would agree with it in this sense. If we are able to completely change the format of
sure, 2. One location, everything. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because of it being WrestleMania 1 being that one location, I could see there being because we're still kind of finishing off that old school wrestling thing where you could win it on the road, you could win it at MSG, you could win it in
old school. It was fine. I just think Mr. T was such a huge part of one that I would want to keep him there. But I agree with you. I think too, if obviously having multiple locations just diluted the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's one location, but I love it. I didn't really think of this because that's funny. We're rebooking Piper. He doesn't have to be a one-time champ.
No,
we can give him the belt more than once. So yeah, I sure. I mean, I'm fine with that. I love it, but I think it should be 2. It makes the card so much better. It's telling a longer story. I dig it.
I could get on board with that because I bet you in retrospect, everybody, including Vince, probably wishes they hadn't done multiple venues.
2 was a bust. I mean, 2 was just it kind of doesn't, you almost give them a pass on it because it's like they were still figuring out things.
Yeah.
But it's an extremely forgettable Mania. Like I remember even being a kid watching it on video when I was like 10 and like being confused by like, what am I watching here? Like it was just, and King Kong Bundy, like that was like an Andre, like kind of rip. I mean, he's okay, I guess, but yeah,
he's just, it's part of the Monster Factory. Just
exactly.
throw a guy, Hogan. It just, WrestleMania doesn't really become WrestleMania until WrestleMania 3.
Yes.
All right. That's the really first WrestleMania.
Totally agree.
1 and 2 are them trying to figure out what they are doing. And they figured it out by 3. And even 5 is, in some ways, it's still figuring it out where it's like, we're going to do this tournament for this.
I mean, 4.
Oh, 4. Excuse me. I said 5. 5 is Hogan and Macho Man. But 4, they're still figuring, it's like, let's do this tournament. It's like, so, but I think you're right. In retrospect, now rebooking, we can say they didn't do this right. WrestleMania 2 should have been this way. And so that could be the return.
It's kind of great too, because I kind of think if you give Piper the belt at 2, Hogan Andre, 3 is great. 4 is a little bit of a cluster, but you know what? It was a great moment when they gave Savage the belt, and he was young at that point. You could keep everything at that point. Like And Piper does some of his movies, and then he could still have his retirement match. He could still have the great segment, the Great Piper's Pit at 5. I feel like that kind of all works because what I was thinking, the reason why, but you I think came up with a great thing. The reason why I wasn't thinking, even though I thought he deserved it, why we didn't have to rebook Piper getting it in the 80s was because because it was such a successful time, because so much went right for them. I was like, oh, where could you actually? I don't want to like take the belt away from Savage, but this is great. I'll take anything away from King Kong Bundy, like anything. I'll take away his lunch and then run away. Like I'll take anything. I just don't really care that much about the man. If he's listening, he's with us, right? Yes. Well, not with us, but you know what I mean.
He's on the planet still.
He's on the planet. Good. Some people think actually he's one of the greats to never win a title. I might have to. Maybe I might be missing something with him. But anyway, yeah, I love it. I think. Do you agree that really I think it's like he gets a belt at 2. I'm sorry, he gets the belt before 2, faces Hogan then, whatever happens, and I bet there's some nice matches, incredible promos. And then I think that almost is a better story. It's really good. It's like now it's been so long since Piper's gotten the belt, but it's a different Piper. You think about Piper then, and then we're talking 1992. He's like different, but he's also like better in the ring. Like he's actually like kind of like it's like Father Prime. Like he's like exceeding people's expectations. You have Hogan retiring, you have Savage doing broadcasting, but Piper's still just doing it. And that's just what it was. So yeah, I love that. Do you agree that we can kind of go from 2 to now everything can kind of stay the same with Piper until now we post 8, everything can kind of stay the same. Even if there was like some missteps here and there. And then we take off from there.
Yeah, I think that, with WrestleMania 2, I kind of have to back up one step here. Is like, so he gets the belt. You have him with the belt at WrestleMania 2.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to have to get the belt off of him. And I still love WrestleMania Hogan versus Andre, but this is just something while you were speaking. I wonder if this would be an interesting way to go, is somewhere between WrestleMania 2 and WrestleMania 3, Andre beats Piper for the belt, and then Hogan is chasing Andre.
Sure. That's a whole other, sure, but we are really, and I know I use this cheesy, and I hope I'm the only guest that does this. That's the tired, 1.2 gigawatts Doc Brown analogies, but like, wow, because think about it, the whole Andre Hogan feud started at a Piper's Pit.
Yes.
So I'm open to that. I think it's cool. It's better than, I guess, Piper just losing it at 2. I think that's fine. I guess Piper so what would Piper be a face facing Andre?
Yes, I would have Andre turn heel.
Okay.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, I think it's okay as long as it gets us to where we were. Yeah, I think it's fine.
There's just something that has to happen with. So when we are changing the past here, you start throwing the belt on Piper. You have to get the belt off of Piper at some point.
But why doesn't he just lose it at 2? I'm thinking because we're saying he gets it before 2. Unfortunately I don't see a long reign in this. I just see him getting the belt, losing it at 2.
Yeah, it's let's clarify where he's getting this.
Right.
Before we move on to the next step. So did you're kind of with me on like he gets it before WrestleMania 1.
Totally. It's a different time back then with house shows. It was different. Yeah.
And then he loses it at WrestleMania 1 to Hogan, loses it back. And then he has to win it again to lose it at WrestleMania 2.
Oh, I like this. This is all, anyone listening is getting this very live. I misunderstood. I thought what we were saying was that 1 still happens the normal way.
Okay.
That Hogan's still the title. I don't really need to change 1, partially just because I think it was such a success and Mr. T factor and all that. I thought 1 still happens, but the Piper Hogan feud continues, and there's no reason for it not to. Piper beats him at a huge house show. Reason being, they didn't have nearly as many pay-per-views.
And then
so
2 is the return.
And then 2 is the return. He loses it at 2 sometime, and then he's able to kind of go through the same. I don't think it'll be hard to give him a face turn, and then we can keep. I really love that Piper's Pit with him, Andre, and Hogan. And what I liked about it so much, because if we do it with Andre beating Piper, then it's like Piper has like this allegiance towards Hogan. But from what I remember, Piper was kind of just like the man in the middle. Like he was just kind of like this innocent bystander, like just like seeing this. And then he had the amazing "you're bleeding" line to Hogan. So, but anyway, I think we're basically on the same page. I think it's like just like a little like semantics, like where does he lose it, where does he not? But basically, I love the idea of him getting the belt, and no matter what, we know we're still getting Hogan Andre at 3, and like the world kind of continues.
Yes. And so we've got I like that. I like that actually better. So I like WrestleMania 1 happening because you kind of just get to have that crazy, weird,
celebrity
thing. Then somewhere along the line, whether it's at this wrestling classic that they had in November or whatever, he wins that title. Could be just an MSG house show, could be who knows where. But then WrestleMania 2 gets to be this return. Yeah, it's the main event. They've got their faces on the poster. We don't have 3 different locations with, he was on WrestleMania 2 in a boxing match versus Mr. T.
Yeah, we don't need that.
Which is terrible.
Yeah.
Right? It's just absolutely terrible. And I think Roddy Piper goes, this is the worst thing I ever did in my career.
Yeah. And that might be why he started leaving and stuff. Yeah.
I did hear him in an interview recently say something along the lines of that maybe Vince started looking at him a little differently after that, of going, oh, he's disappointed. And so it's like, oh, you're going to be sliding down the card.
I think he's right.
And part of the reason why he left. And so he's gone after that, shortly after that, after WrestleMania 3. But that WrestleMania 3 moment for him is great. Turns him face. And so, I think all of that works. So he's now going and doing movies. He does They Live. All of that works because it only helps make him a bigger star.
Totally. I mean, and that's the thing with these sure, there might be like a WrestleMania card he could have been on, but at the end of the day, it's like he's still in 92 is a huge star. He's had the belt, but now it's like, wow, now he gets to like try to get it again. And even just saying that out loud, I mean, depending on where we want to go with this, well, again, just to the credit of Piper, he could be a bad guy getting this. He could have easily turned on Hart after 8, or we could start this Rocky story with him. And a really believable Rocky story, because Piper was so believable with anything he did. So you can go either way with him now. But what we know is he's going to be over. And that's the most important thing, right? When we're doing this rebooking, we know the crowd is going to respond to this. We're not asking the audience to do anything they don't want to do.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Because whereas, a modern example of this is Big Show, where it's like turn, and none of it really matters. And the audience is not the one that turned them. It's just somebody in a writer's room turned them. Piper's turns always felt like it was the audience created this. And so I actually kind of like the idea of keeping from our changing through WrestleMania 2, keeping things the same through WrestleMania 8, where he's got that, and he's got that great match with Brett, and maybe a turn there, where because it's like that's setting you up, because Bret Hart's a great baby face, and Piper could be a great heel.
What if we did? I know they didn't have Raw then. What if we did next week, right? The week after Mania, some Superstars or something, and Piper goes to congratulate Bret, or maybe they're in a tag match. Whatever it is, something happens. So at 8, when he's about to hit him with the timekeeper belt and he doesn't do it, what if he does it?
Yes.
A week later. Like, I think you got it there. It's the crowd, and Bret was over enough. The kids will cheer for Bret, and the smart fans at that point will know like that it's going to be fun to have Piper as a heel again. And I think that's it. I mean, you have it right there.
for sure. Yeah, it's
And they could have a long feud.
I'm thinking this through because it's like I that timekeeper belt moment. It's like I don't know if you need to delay it. I wonder if he just does that in that moment, he's going to get booed out of the building. You know, this is Indianapolis. I know this town. I know these people.
Wait a second. Did you not go to 8?
I did not go to 8.
I heard something about this.
Yes, because I could tell you if I was there and he hit him with that timekeeper belt, I would have booed him out of the building.
Yeah.
And so it's certainly I think because of what that area is, they're not one of those places that is a heel market. They're going to be a babyface market. They're going to boom out of the building. Gives him a great turn there. I
like it. Yeah.
And he can then, because just to keep in context where wrestling is at this time, the people that are in the world title picture is going to be changing very quickly here.
Yeah.
We're leaving Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan. There's people though like Sid Justice who probably were supposed to be in that mix that didn't quite get in the mix then. I mean, he's doing main event stuff, but he didn't get that I'm going for the belt moment really. Undertaker, you know, these are the big guys, but we're kind of leaving that and we're ushering in this brief moment in time where Ric Flair is the champion. Macho Man is the champion. It's the end of that steroid era, and they're kind of helping that we haven't gone completely to that new generation. We're not completely.
We don't have to. I think they did it too fast. I think like we can kind of give it a little more of a gradual push. I think they kind of forced it on us a little bit, you know?
Well, for sure. And I think this is what's so interesting about this particular time is that if everything goes through this, now we're having a little period of time where you can have Piper, you can have Ric Flair, and you can have Macho Man all in this title picture. And you've got the younger people coming up like Bret Hart. We've already established his feud with Piper. We've got, Shawn Michaels is going to be coming into this picture where, okay, there's some of this old guard that is not the steroid era that can help prop everything up a little bit longer. Than
could just be a better year.
Right. It just could be a better 93 or whatever. Yeah. 92 and 93. So that's where I see it with that. I see Piper and Macho Man.
Well, I say this out of love, and I love that I have another slight alter.
That's what this is about.
And I love it. Here's because I kind of know where I want to go, and I know sometimes this can mess you up with rebooking. I'll tell you where I want to go.
Okay, tell me.
I want to go to Piper Hart. Piper walks in as a champion at WrestleMania 9. That's where I want to go. I think we all know the Hart Yokozuna thing. That doesn't mean Yokozuna doesn't become Yokozuna. I think you could, instead of Giant Gonzalez Taker, we get Yokozuna Taker. They still could have revisited that feud a few years later. It doesn't even matter, right? Like they could have found a way to make that work. So because I love the idea of Piper turning on Hart. But here's the thing. I think you save it now that I'm thinking about it. What if it just happens that everything we're saying just happens a little later, okay? So rather than Piper turning on Hart, he actually stays a face, okay? And what if we keep kind of things away the same? Because I hate how Savage lost the title to Flair at a house show, and then Flair lost it at a house show to Bret. It's just like such like lazy booking. What if we keep it that, I don't know exactly what Piper's doing between Mania and SummerSlam. I do. I think a Piper Shawn Michaels feud is perfect, actually. I think it's like and like I said, Piper could lose it, okay? And then you get Piper beats Flair for the title. We know what kind of, it should have happened anyway. We know the chemistry they had. We know the history they had, the love they had for each other. We could have had a real Piper Flair feud in the fall of 92. Piper gets the belt. Now I don't know exactly what happened. I'm thinking Piper gets the belt. Brett gets the Rumble. It looks like a face-to-face, and then Piper turns on Hart.
Okay, the Royal Rumble 93.
Yeah. Because I just, unless maybe you didn't have the same finish line, it's just like, I feel like Brett, if Piper turns on Brett at 8, we have to address it immediately, right? Especially that Brett just got the belt. And it was still, and it was such a kind of a beautiful moment between them two at the end. I'm thinking like, and I'm sorry if I'm going a few 2 steps ahead, but like, I'm just thinking like, especially with Michaels and Flair, there's some good heel options for a face Piper to go against. You're building a Rocky thing for him, but then the one thing we never saw in the movies is Rocky never turns on Paulie, yeah. But in this, maybe that happens.
I like that. In fact, I can see that him holding that ring bell and just the way it all goes out, but that's a teaser for later. He's not going to turn on him, but he eventually does turn on Brett
with the bell.
And I think that you're right about that, because I do want to see Piper Flair. I think we can have some Piper Flair for that heavyweight championship, and it doesn't work if Flair's not a heel.
Yeah,
Flair has to be the heel. And so, sorry, listeners, my dog, some sort of noise.
He was getting rowdy.
He's getting rowdy. He's getting Rowdy Roddy. And so and you need Piper to be the babyface in that situation.
I think so. Because
we
know he can do it. Yeah,
he can do it. Whereas, there is no chance at this time that Flair's going to be anything but a heel. Yeah. He's great. And so I could just see, just the matches we would have had for that year of Piper, Flair, and the promos. These guys really loved each other in real life. So I know they're going to put everything they have into this. And I could see a moment where maybe Bret Hart, like you're saying, Bret Hart's now the young guy, gets in this heavyweight championship mix, and Piper doesn't quite like that. It's like, now you're coming for, you got my Intercontinental Championship. Now you come in and you get my World Championship. Well, you know what? You're getting the bell over the head this time.
No more Mr. Nice Guy.
No, I should have hit you with this bell a year ago. Instead, now you're getting it now. Yeah. So
and he could do that on a Piper's Pit, where he's the champion and he's having. I mean, I guess it's this might be a little too telegraphed actually, but like I was thinking something like you have, maybe it's before Brett even like wins the Rumble. Okay, and it's just about like Brett entering the Rumble. And to show Piper's insecurities, Piper hits him with a bell, even then maybe, being like, you're not. And then it makes Brett even more of an underdog in the Rumble. And maybe you have like Piper Savage at the Rumble or something. So I guess what I'm saying is maybe Piper's turns a heel a tiny bit before. But then, yeah, I think Brett Piper, what I just love about all this is that like you said, like we're really changing a lot right now.
Yes.
Because we are changing like the next couple of years. But what I like about it is that we're not like saying don't push Hart, don't push HBK. Like what do you think? I don't think Piper should walk out with the belt in 9. I think you give it to Brett.
Brett's got to have it. And keep it. And keep it, not have Hogan come in and take it.
Yeah. Exactly. And then you could do Brett Zuna at King of the Ring, or like, because the whole thing with Hogan is Hogan shouldn't have even just ever been there. He shouldn't even he just shouldn't have come back. Honestly.
Well,
nothing good happened out of Hogan coming back.
No, I mean, this is the thing. I'm going to be devil's advocate for Hogan for a second.
Yeah.
You want him to go on this European tour. You want to kind of have that, whatever.
Right.
Well, he could do that with Yokozuna, and there's no belt involved.
True.
He's going up against this monster, that heel of Yokozuna. He doesn't just have fun with it, because he doesn't leave with the belt. Like after the whole tour, he had to give it back to Yokozuna, right? Because they needed to move on from Hogan. He was going to go away. So just don't involve the belt at all. It doesn't need to be there.
Great call.
And so the belt now is being tossed amongst the people we've been talking about. And Bret Hart leaves 9 with the belt.
And he can like feud with, how he fought Ramon at the Rumble?
Mm-hmm.
That could be a feud he has right after,
Right.
He could keep feuding with Piper, but like, it just makes 9 so much. I mean, it's so universally considered the worst.
Mm-hmm.
This definitely keeps it from being the worst ever.
Oh, for sure. For sure. It's kind of like I think we've just corrected 2 different WrestleManias.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah. Yeah.
And Piper's the reason, because if you have Piper as just this one-on-one, and same way with WrestleMania, one-on-one versus Bret Hart, instead of there's outside involvement, there's, with Yokozuna, you don't have any salt thrown in anybody's face. You don't need that stuff. You can just have a one-on-one
emotional match.
Emotional
like it would
match.
Be, and who knows, maybe Piper starts getting second thoughts again during that match, and that shakes him up a little bit, like who knows. I keep thinking about CM Punk throughout this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm understanding why CM Punk was upset with even facing the possibility of facing Triple H at 30. And that's because I think he felt like I am this like special weapon you guys have. You can put me anywhere. I can do anything. Just give me something that I can really sink my teeth into.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe Piper didn't, beg for it, or not beg for it, but say that. But I think Piper was the same way. You could put him anywhere. He could fix WrestleManias. And it takes a special kind of person to be able to do that. And that's why I'm just so high on him. Because there's very few guys like him. I mean, you couldn't even do that with someone like Hogan, because he was too big to do that with. Mm-hmm. Meaning you could move Piper around. He could be the 4th match on the card. He could be the lead match on the card. Really, really unique and special. And what's cool about Post 9 is that, again, because he's such a kind of a chameleon, you can do whatever you want with him. The world is still your oyster with Piper. He can leave if he wants. There's plenty there, though, still, even on that map, even as it's shrinking a little bit, you could still get a terrific Piper Razor Ramon feud later on in the year. Mm-hmm. That would have been awesome, actually. But I think what you're giving Piper is just one more showcase. I mean, I don't know about you. I don't really see him getting it again. I'm looking at like, they could. I think at that point, Piper would have started feeling kind of old and kind of like, and I mean, look, there's some things like obviously there's just a few years there that I think maybe can't be fixed. I mean, maybe you can put Piper in a match that King Mabel was in, and that would help us out a little bit. But I think like the Diesel years were okay, and I don't really see how Piper is much better than that. So I kind of think this is his last crowning moment. But that's a hell of a career.
Yeah, and I could see. This is the thing, like a lot of just Piper being in that mix, the top of the card mix there for like having those 2 championship runs. It also makes the events that happen later, like whether it's King of Ring 94, Piper and Lawler, it makes it more interesting.
Oh yeah.
And
I forgot about that.
Kind of an old school match, but there's also like Roddy Piper's been a champion, so it kind of raises that level up even just a little bit more. Also, the Goldust match, that Hollywood backlot match, it's still that raises it up even more. It's a great one.
I think it's a great. I just thought of what could have been an amazing feud too, right after 10. Oh, I love this. Piper Owen.
Oh yeah.
Piper Owen Hart. Because you still got so much backstory there, and let Owen be. Piper can start doing what like HBK did a lot, and like he could start losing to these guys and giving them even more. Like I'm talking like Owen. Imagine if he could have put Owen over, what that could have done for him. Obviously I know Brett put him over at 10, but yeah, I think it's interesting. I know we touched on it. It's like someone could say like, okay, great. You gave Piper the belt. What does that even do? So he was already top 10. Does that really move him up? I don't know if it moves him up, to be honest, right? And rankings are so subjective anyway. Does it put him on the Mount Rushmore if you're really going by like mainstream impact? Probably not, right? You probably got to put The Rock, Austin, Hogan, Flair, Andre, those guys over him still. But what it does is it just fixes some years, and also just like fixes like a ridiculous, stupid conversation that I don't want to have to keep having with people, the few people that will talk wrestling with me. And that is, why was Piper never champ? It just doesn't make any sense. And he just shouldn't be on that list.
Yes, for sure. And so that kind of, I kind of see that Gold Dust, match being sort of his swan song of WWF, that the Attitude Era, I don't think that him being in WWF's Attitude Era, I think he helps usher that in. It brings even more gravitas to that Gold Dust match. But I don't necessarily see him with Stone Cold. I don't see him with Bret Hart again. So I see him then going over to WCW and doing that NWO run. I want to change that up just a little bit as we're kind of rounding out his rebooking, is that now, because he's been a champ before, it feels more like a return match, like a return to the feud than just an unfinished feud before where he doesn't win the title and he wins because he puts him in a sleeper. That just didn't pop. But if he's coming back and he's the babyface to Hogan's heel, he now has, I've beaten you before. I can do it again. You've beaten me. We've the last time we left it, you had beaten me. So we're 2-2. So let's go from there and put that belt on the line.
Love it.
The belt is actually on the line. And I think he could actually take it from, Hollywood Hogan.
He could.
And have that one last time. He's got the belt. The NWO's down for a month, because
if Luger got it, why can't Piper get it? Right. Like I would put Piper in there over Luger. And I think if Piper had that added, caveat, like you're talking about, I love that. I think it's amazing. Actually, that totally kind of reshapes his career in WCW. And I also agree with you. And it kind of goes back to what I was thinking about the 80s. Do I think Piper could have done some really cool stuff in the Attitude Era? I do, but at the same time, he's not getting the belt. And it's also like the Attitude Era. I think there's a reason why I don't think you've done many episodes with rebooking the Attitude Era. It's pretty darn good, especially the main event scene, right? Yes. Like that main event scene for a good 3 years was kind of flawless. I mean, for the most part, they made so many good decisions, and so it's like, what are you going to do? You're going to have Piper take the belt off Austin? That would actually feel weird, and that could hurt him actually, because you don't want to take it off someone who's like the most red hot superstar in the history of the sport. And that's probably what Vince was thinking to a degree too. But that's why I like you taking it off. I actually don't think you can't have Piper beat Hogan after Hogan beats Andre. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because now Hogan's in like a different stratosphere, and I feel like you do kind of have to protect that, I think. So yeah, I love all of it. And then I think the end can just be, it's interesting too. You wonder what this would have done for Piper as like a human being, I don't know, like because we do know that, people who think this is fake and people think it's like, these guys don't care. You are sorely mistaken. Who knows what having the belt a couple times would have done for Piper's confidence. Maybe he would have kept himself in better shape. I don't know, but I do think it's possible, obviously we'll never know, but the man definitely deserved more accolades than he had,
Absolutely. Cause he is one of those all-time greats. And you see like, okay, having the belt a couple times in WWF, in the 80s, the 90s, then he's kind of having his, he's had his swan song in WWF already, his singles version. He goes this run with the NWO where he gets the belt, but man, that just makes them more galvanized and against him, beat him down. And then you can kind of let him, that's kind of his, there we go. A last big push. Then, he does his Ric Flair tag team stuff.
He deserved a retirement match. And I think by maybe giving him this extra shine, he gets that. Like he deserves. And then I know, I'll just say like, I don't know. Who knows? Like he could have gone a WrestleMania. Well, I know he fought Jericho, right? He was in that match, the 3-on-1 with Jericho at 25, but that was like a handicap match. He maybe could have gone a retirement match against Jericho at 23, 24. I don't know. Because I just think like him having, I think him having that extra prestige, but also, as I just said, it would have just been interesting to see if we are keeping Piper on top so much longer, is he keeping himself on top, you know? And then he's giving himself more opportunities. So, but again, it's such a testament to the man that he could still be such an all-time great, still top 10 without ever being world champ. And he wasn't a special attraction either. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Very, very amazing career that he did have. And it's a testament to, like you said, just what kind of a talent he was, you know. And as we kind of wrapping up this whole podcast here, I think that, like you said, we're not going to change probably his status in the wrestling business, because even if he wins a couple times, you're not surpassing Hogan or Flair on this list. Maybe he's a little closer to Macho Man on the list.
Oh, definitely. Well, I guess that's another conversation, but I actually think he already is. I was thinking maybe he's closer to The Rock.
Okay. Which may, you know, maybe that's a possibility. And maybe, who knows whether or not, if he's champion, Hollywood, you know, he does more Hollywood stuff, you know, because he's champion in a couple different eras and he's on top and getting that press. And it's like, okay, maybe, like you said, keeping himself in shape, maybe he doesn't have to wrestle as much because he's been on top. He's made a little more money. He's also maybe getting more acting gigs beyond what he did in the 80s because of this. And so his body isn't going through as much. He can maybe be around a little bit longer. So he certainly is, you know, he's a seasoned taste. Like you have to get used to him. Yeah. And once you get used to him, that seasoning that he is, you go, I love this. Yes. And it's a mature taste. You have to acquire him. And kids might not understand it, but I think adults really do appreciate him. And so I think we not have only changed his career, but we've changed the history of pro wrestling and of WrestleManias. And maybe his personal life, maybe his marriage, maybe how he was as a father. We may have changed a lot of stuff. Everything. Who knows? You know, all reports were that he was a great father. Well, I know. I didn't mean to. I don't want to get myself in trouble. All reports said that he was a good father, but just a happier father. I don't know. Well, you know what? Unfortunately, because you can edit that because of all this, we're not editing it. Staying in there because baby, yeah. But unfortunately, that's a sad point. Is all of this success in his professional life, actually his home life suffered, and he was not as good of a father. Thanks to your rebooking. So thanks, Andrew. Yeah. You made Piper a worse father. I'm here all week. Try the deal. Yeah. It's a pleasure, man. Absolutely. Well, I had a great time with you again. I'm sure you will be a guest on this show again. And I will always popular demand. Popular demand demands it. So, Andrew, thank you again, and we will talk soon. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Do you agree with our booking? Would you do it differently? Well, I'm at Comedian Luke on all social media platforms, and you can actually at Rebooking TT on Twitter and Rebooking the Territory on Facebook. You can also find out about future episodes there. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and please give us a 5-star review. It truly helps.